Now it's time to actually test our prototype. A usability test is all about coming up with the questions that you want to ask and making sure that you're fulfilling the metrics that you set out with, making sure that the challenge is right, making sure that the deliverable is correct, and this is where it all comes together. So in a usability test, typically the way we do it at Google with like our design sprint methodology is we'll test with 5 participants. We have a script that we follow, and then we get the users to speak aloud as they actually do it. So if you remember going back to the rough and ready prototype that I spoke about earlier, we're following the same kind of principles here as well. So you always make sure the script is the same, because otherwise if the test variants are different, then you'll get mixed results and it'll be incorrect. So you always make sure you have a script that you actually get the users to follow. A script, you have a setup. So the first thing you do is you explain to the user where they are. So in our case, we'll say to the user, you've installed this app, you've had it on your phone for ages, it's about ordering coffee, and what you're going to do is you're going to try and order coffee and get it delivered to yourself. So that's the setup. So then you pass over the device, and then you say, okay, I'd like you to order a coffee. So that's the task. So if this is a different type of app, you're basically trying to list out what is the task. And for this, you'll revert back to your metrics. Remember what your goal was. That's what the tasks will be made up of. Next, you actually observe how they do, and then you take notes. Typically in a usability test, you have 2 people. One person who's building the rapport with the user and asking the questions, and another person just taking notes. The reason for this is when you're building up a rapport, you want to really make sure you have eye contact with the person. You want to make sure that you're building up a good relationship. If you're taking notes, there's a high chance that you actually miss really important things, and so that you have the note taker for that reason. If you've got other teammates who are involved in your design, you don't want to overwhelm the people you're testing. So maybe you might have a video conference call so they're observing from another room. Again, this is very common in design sprints when you have a whole team of people building a prototype together. And finally, once the person's actually done with the test, you might follow up with feedback questions. So you might ask, what worked for you? What didn't? A common open question, what worked for you? Because you want to get really into their head. What were the things that were successful for them? Did it make sense? And get as much feedback as possible. Remembering that users think in analog. They may not think in the digital way. So there's a common quote by Henry Ford where was a tribute to Henry Ford. It's not proven that it is him, but he will say, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And this is often used as a term to say don't ever ask the users. But if you actually look at the question as, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. What the people are actually trying to tell you is they want to go faster. So sometimes when a user is articulating something, they won't be as clear of I want X feature or Y feature. They'll be talking about the experience that they actually want. And that's what you're trying to pull apart from when you have open questions. Another thing is like, would you use this product? Is this useful for them? And then why is that? Or why isn't that the case? You really want to understand what was good about this and what isn't, and it gives the person some time to actually talk this through. Again, it's all a listening exercise. You want to try and keep this as open as possible. And finally, you might say, if you had a magic wand and could wish for anything, what would it be? So you're allowing the user to go wild and think, what is the perfect scenario? Again, they'll be speaking in analog, so you're trying to pull apart what they actually really mean. You may question it, you may want to refer back to it later, but again, these are open questions just to really understand where the user is at. Again, there isn't any golden rules of questions. You basically have to design the script and the questions you ask based on your own prototype and your designs, but basically think about the task that you want the user to fulfill and other things that you could basically tease out, and really ask yourself, what is it that you're trying to learn? Another quite common question is 5 people really enough? And at Google, we always use 5 people. 5 people give you enough variation. Any more than this and you'll see repeat results. You can do, say, 10, 20 if you really like, but you won't learn anything more, really. You might have small things here and there, but generally speaking, 5 is enough to have different variations. But of course, this is down to you and your team. If you feel more comfortable interviewing more people, by all means do. And just to summarize, find 5 users that you can test with. Generally speaking, people who use the products. It's okay to ask friends and family, but when you're actually moving on to real products in the real world, you want to try and find the type of users that you actually are aiming for. So if you have a specific user group, try and find people in that category, because you'll get truer answers in that respect. Write a script for them to follow. So remember your metric and your goal. What is it that you're trying to actually get them to do, and follow through the tasks. And then ask them what worked and what didn't, and document that in the notes. Have an open conversation with them. allow them to express their opinion. And with that, you should be in a great place to actually test your prototype effectively and get some great results.